Well, we're now going to go to Russia, which I'm very excited about. And our next guest is Olga Guseva, a fantastic keynote speaker, here to talk about customer-centric culture, your one and only strategic competitive advantage. And I see Olga on the screen. Olga, как дела? I'm saying, how are you in Russian? We won't do the rest of it in Russian, but здравствуй, как дела?
Как дела? Добрый день.
Добрый день.
Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and it's my true pleasure meeting you. Hello, Nadine. And yes, really, let me start by actually asking you a question. How frequently you hear from from anywhere that the company is really number one, that the customer shall go first, that the customer is the king? Please use the Q&A section to press 1 on your keyboard in Q&A section if you have heard this recently from somewhere, from a company that you are buying products or services from. So it's actually quite common. Yes, thank you. It's actually quite common that we hear it from somewhere, that companies are claiming that customer is number one, customer is the king. But now take a breath and think. Actually, how many times you as a customer had experienced not perfect, let's put it that way, customer service, that you felt that the company doesn't really care for you, that the company behaves in a greedy way, or employees are rude. And again, that's quite a common thing to happen. If you think back about your recent experience, you would most probably find out examples when you have experienced it as a customer. So obviously there is a big contradiction. How comes that there's so many companies claim that customer experience is so important for them, and at the same time you as a customer see that it's not really happening? And on an intuitive level, it's pretty clear and understandable that good customer experience brings company to success. So what is not really happening here? Why it's not coming into action? In my view, that's because top managers or owners of the companies don't really buy into CX. CX people frequently come to top management to ask for resources or suggest a project. And what they frequently hear is, well, that's not really the priority. Well, we don't really have the resources now. Well, it's not the best time. Let's postpone it for a while. Why is it happening? Most probably, in many of the cases, that's happening because executives don't see the value of customer experience directly on their business. It's like customer experience is not about the color of the uniform or size of the smile of customer-facing employees. It's really about money. It is about commercial performance. And there are numerous research all across the globe that tells us that actually customer experience is directly related to commercial performance. Just as one example, the very extensive research done by Professor Lyndon Brown have discovered that 53% of the commercial success of the company is explained by the level of customer centricity of a corporate culture. So why really this link is not working for many companies? Sometimes when executive people hear all those numbers from big international research, they say, well, okay, it's just somewhere there on that side. It's them, not us. So the question is, what is it for me? How's my company performing? What's the link for me between my commercial performance and my customer experience? And the first takeaway I would like to share with you today is really get together with your customer experience people and understand what's the value of customer experience in your specific company. What's the value of one happy customer? What's the risk and what's the cost of one complaint? So by understanding this, you're gonna get better understanding how important customer experience is for you, and you need to make sure it's your team. Going further, and you can ask me a question. Well, Olga, hold on. We are not in customer experience. We are in sales, or we are in IT, we are in accounting. There are special CX folks in the company who are responsible for taking care of the customer. So basically, why should I care? And the answer is actually customer experience is not only about CX department. It's a cultural discipline. It's about every single employee, because every single employee in a company is responsible for building customer experience. Say, let's imagine an IT person who have never ever seen a customer. He's probably even sitting in a different building, but he is contributing to customer experience by, I don't know, updating or working on a system that holds information that telesales people are using. And because of this IT person, a telesales can give quick information to a customer. An accountant who, again, have never seen a customer is responsible for delivering the bills timely, accurately, and quickly. So everyone within the company is contributing to building a customer experience. If you are in sales or if you are in marketing, you have a very important role. You build customer expectations. And if you have built them properly, that means the customer won't be disappointed that you have done the right thing. So the takeaway number 2 is really, again, think about your role in building customer experience. What is your role and what is your value? What's your contribution into customer experience? And think how you can do it better. And now let me share with you, because I'm a CX person, customer experience person, so let me share with you several CX tools that can really help you in your everyday job to make your life better and that can help you perform your everyday duties better. Actually, have you ever heard about such a tool as Customer Journey Map, or CJM? Have you ever heard, Nadine?
Yes, I have.
Great. Okay, so actually it's quite popular, and more companies also in Russia start using it now. Basically, what is Customer Journey Map? That's a representation of all steps of interaction between the company and the client. And if I'll be able to share my screen, I'll show you how it would look. Hold on. Yeah, it could look like this. Don't care, it's in Russian. It's not about reading the details, just giving you the picture. It could look like this, or it could look like this. It doesn't really matter how specifically the customer journey map looks like, but the basic idea stays the same. You go step by step, you follow the customer, and you find out every single stage what the customer is doing, what the customer is, what are the needs and the emotions the customer is experiencing. And you follow and needs, thoughts, demands, feelings, and emotions, going together with the customer the whole way. And actually, it's a tool that is used by CX people, but it's because if you know you're doing great, isn't product. If you know where the pains and fears are, you know how to deal with the objections, customer objections, so you can give more value to the customer. The second tool, so this is tool number 1. Get together with your CX folks, study the customer journey map together, and you will find a whole lot of valuable insight how you can interact with your customers better. The second tool I want to share with you is called CX Personas. actually why the whole idea of personas appeared. It actually came to us from marketing. And the reason behind that is that customers are different. We cannot explain everything by looking at one single customer. So we start segmenting the customer database into groups that behave and feel in a similar way. But while marketing personas are more concentrated on the way people are buying the products or services, CX personas are more about how people use the product. It could look, for example, like that. And actually, persona is nothing more than a typical representation of a typical representative of this self. How this person looks like, what's the age, what's the what's the gender, what's the goals, what are the interests, preferences, skills, what exactly this person likes. And again, by understanding this, we can get extremely valuable insights. How can we bring more value to this person? And last but not least, the third tool I want to share with you, it's the customer loyalty and notion of customer loyalty, which is frequently measured with the help of NPS metric, which is also quite widely known both in Europe, and we use it a lot in Russia and in many other countries as well. And why loyalty is important? It's very simple, because loyal customers are buying more, they are buying more frequently, they are more eager and more ready for cross-selling and upselling, and the source of leads for you. And again, loyalty gives you customer loyalty, the level of customer loyalty gives you a very good understanding of how to distribute your resources and set up the priorities the right way. So basically, the tool number 3 that you can use is customer loyalty and the metrics of customer loyalty that can be discussed and analyzed together with the CX team so that you could search for valuable insights regarding your customer base. And basically, that's all I wanted to share with you today. And please use this opportunity to collaborate with your CX team to develop customer-centric culture in your department and in the organization as a whole, work on commercial success, and build your competitive advantage. So happy collaboration, and thank you very much for your attention.
Очень хорошо. Thank you very much indeed, Olga. And I know you're managing director of one of the very few companies in Russia that concentrate on customer experience. So thank you very much for sharing those very tangible and actionable tools for people to think about. And what struck me actually, you talked about customer loyalty, but when you actually acquire new customers, how can you ensure that you give them the right customer service? And would you say what applies in Russia is different to, say, in other parts of the world?
Well, probably in this aspect, Russia has no difference with other parts of the world because it's universal. We as customers, we love to be treated well. We love to be respected. We love when company knows what I love, what I prefer, what I like, what's important for me. And it's the job of the company to understand that and to do its best to fulfill my needs and my desires.
Indeed. And what are the biggest challenges when it comes to customer experience during a crisis or a pandemic? How have you adapted to these set of circumstances?
Well, actually, we are in touch with the big number of customer experience specialists across Russia and globally. And for those 3 or 4 months already, we are sharing the experience between the experts. How do companies cope with this situation and what are they doing? So in a way, we are helping each other and sharing the knowledge to explain what companies in different parts of the world are doing, but few things are really universal. And first thing that's like a common learning that comes from all across the world, that customer experience matters. And the companies who have been doing good job pre-COVID, who have been caring about the customers, who have been willing to find out more about the customer, they are now reaping off the benefits because they see loyal customers who are ready to understand some imperfections in product and service, etc. And they can enjoy this loyalty. And the companies who have been taking it as granted, they have faced a very difficult situation when customers are just going away and they cannot do anything about it. So the lesson learned from this COVID situation is really customer experience and customer loyalty matters. And the second thing, that emotions are important. Of course, the physical features of the product are important, but I mean, there are really few unique products in the world. And even if you have a unique product now, today or tomorrow, it's going to be copied by competitors and you are no longer unique. The only sustainable competitive advantage is your customer experience that stems, that grows from customer-centric culture. And that's the second lesson a lot of companies have learned, and now they're investing time and efforts into building this culture.
Indeed, that rings so true. I think of all the brands that I really like, when I've spoken to them in the last 3 or 4 months, there's that emotional dialogue that you may not have had with them before, but they've got that deep understanding. And, you know, I want to hear how they're doing as much as they want to hear how I'm doing. It's quite extraordinary, actually, some of the conversations I've had with brands that, you know, usually you see them as very functional, and that's all I want usually, but it's a deeper relationship, the brands that have got it right. So I think that's spot on. So very quickly, how about a customer experience success story for you? I know that you speak at conferences, you're a judge on multiple awards, you're a renowned expert in Russia and beyond. A success story for you, and what made the difference?
Okay, let me share you a small story, a recent story, and it's about a very, very small company. So there's like, sometimes people think that customer experience is for big brands that have huge customer experience, etc. So it's not necessarily the case. And let me tell you the story of a small dance studio that's based in St. Petersburg, Russia. And imagine what? Dancing studio. That's all about personal interaction. That's all about being physically close to another people. And then COVID comes and the whole studios are supposed to be closed, and this studio as well. And while other studios are saying, well, we have to wait, what can we do? Those guys, they're saying, no, we are not giving up. We want to be in touch with our customers. And they start doing different things. They started online lessons via Zoom. It felt strange in the beginning, but the most important message, the owner of the studio have called every single customer and asked, would you like to try that? Let's try together. That's going to be an experiment. It's not going to be perfect, but let's make it. So they have done it, and it worked. They started running online lessons. It's not the same, but still it's a connection with the customers. And it's a feeling of being together, of being in touch. And guess what? Now they have run an online dance festival with people sitting at home. And this is a great sense of being together with all those people. This is what this small studio have done for everyone who is attending. So I guess this is a very good example how customer experience can really make a difference.
Yeah, and that's a lovely example. Actually, my father was born in St. Petersburg, so I'm actually half Russian, Olga. So I've got a lot of love for that place, and I'd love to meet you one day. Thank you so much. From Russia with love, Olga Guseva. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going back to South Africa. They're in force today, our South Africans, and I'm delighted to say that my next speaker is Graeme Codrington, and the title of his presentation is Same Planet, Different World, Building DNA into Organisation and Careers. Now, I know Graeme is an expert on the new world of work and multi-generational workplaces, amongst other things. Graeme, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well, Nadine. It's been great to watch everybody so far. Great to be part of it now.
Wow, I love your backdrop. I want to swap places. That is so cool. Is that where you live? Is that home?
No. This is where I am actually at the moment. out in a shed outside. The family kicked me to a shed outside. I'm just pretending I can travel.
You could have.
I love to travel, and I'm just pretending.
Great. Well, Graeme, I know you're going to help us discover, I think, the 3 key ways to build resilience and adaptiveness. So I'm going to hand over to you and wish you the very best of luck.
What I help clients to do is to anticipate disruptive change and prepare and plan for it. That's not something I've just been doing now. During the last few months, it's been something I've been doing for 20 years. My title is a futurist. Not that I can predict the future or know exactly what's happening in the future, but rather I present scenarios. I help companies think through the forces that are going to disrupt the world over the next few years, and then to put in plans for that. And all I want to do to share 2 thoughts with you. The first is that this COVID crisis gives us the opportunity to build the types of organizations that can survive disruption. And that's the key. I've been talking to clients for 2 decades about living with disruption, about building adaptable organizations that are flexible to deal with anything that comes their way. And a lot of clients have been able to pretend, to hold off the future, if you like, and pretend that they are reasonably adaptable while this VUCA world, we've all heard the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world rages around them. Now you don't have a choice. Now the COVID spotlight is shone on you, and it's forcing you to realize that you can't just go ahead with your normal plans. I mean, what's your budget worth this year? What's your strategic plans worth this year? Nothing. And here's my first point to you. This is the new reality of the 2020s. When the COVID crisis is over, then you've got automation and artificial intelligence and robotics coming. And when that's over, you've got climate change and sustainability pushing towards us. So when that is over, there's going to be geopolitical stress. And when that's over, there's going to be a tsunami or an earthquake or a plague of locusts. Who knows what's going to happen after that? The point is, the 2020s was always going to be a decade of deep disruptive change. And COVID is just the first of a whole series of disruptions. So instead of just trying to survive COVID and come out the other side intact, what about using this opportunity to really build the adaptability you need in order to respond to any and all disruptions in the future? So that would be the second point then, which is that COVID is not just a crisis to be survived. It is an invitation to reimagine your business. So let me give you a little bit more detail behind that. Let's talk about adaptability first. Back in 2011, the United States Military Strategic Command, called STRATCOM, put together an amazing plan. It's been recently declassified. And for those of you who like this stuff, this is a genuine military document you can go and search for CONPLAN 8888-11. And you'll find it online, and you'll see if you're looking at my screen, it was the counter-zombie dominance plan. This was the American military's plan for the zombie apocalypse. A few hundred pages of detailed planning for how the US military would respond to zombies. And some of you might be rolling your eyes, especially our American colleagues who we're going to hear from shortly, and saying, good grief, what a waste of money. No wonder we've got a budget deficit in our country if the military is wasting money like that. Except, I don't think the military was wasting money. Why did they do this, a zombie apocalypse plan? The reason was that they wanted to test their most strategic thinkers, to test their military planners, to see if they would be able to handle an enemy they had never encountered before, if they were able to deal with a threat that nobody had ever seen before, if they were able to use all of their systems and processes to deal with something that nobody was familiar with. And so instead of making up a hypothetical country and hypothetical threats, they went for the weirdest, the strangest thing. They could have chosen an alien invasion. They just went for the zombie apocalypse. And it's actually a remarkable plan to read through. What they were trying to do is not work out how to deal with zombies. They were trying to work out, what do we do when we don't know what to do. This is where a lot of our organizations are at the moment. We don't know what to do. We've never encountered this before. And we need to learn not merely how to get through the COVID crisis, but we need to learn how to build an organization that actually will thrive in a time when we don't know what to do. So that when we get into the next disruption and the one after that, we're even stronger, we're even better than we are now. Now, of course, the question you'll ask is, well, what does that look like? What are the things you need to do? And there, of course, we would need a few hours to go through the detail. Let me just give you one example of what you might want to do right now, what you could do and even start doing tomorrow. One of the biggest problems that non-adaptive organizations have is that the distance between authority and responsibility is quite large. People who have the responsibility to do something don't necessarily have the authority to do it. In most organizations, information flows to where the authority is. The people who really know what's going on, those are normally your commercial people, your frontline people, your customer relationship people. They know what the customers need. And that's absolutely vital right now, isn't it? During the COVID crisis, to speak to your customers and deliver them value. You've heard Olga, you've heard Martin, you've heard Geoff talk about this already in this session. So they've done that work, they know what to do, but now what happens? They've got an idea of what the customer needs, but they've got to bring it back to the sales manager. It goes into a sales committee, who then speaks to the executive, who then has to have approval from legal and compliance, and risk must look at it. Then marketing wants to get involved to make sure that the contract is on the right Pantone headset, and back to the client. A few days later, and with probably a whole lot of revisions that the salesperson is not happy with, it eventually gets back to the customer. What we need to do is make sure that authority flows to where the information is. Especially in this time of deep disruption, we want our businesses to be agile, flexible, resilient. You know all the words we're using. So we've got to make sure that our frontline people are equipped, are empowered to make decisions in the moment to give the best service possible to their customers. How do you deliver what Geoff Ramm talked about earlier in the session in terms of celebrity service if you don't give the frontline person the authority to actually do something? What I'm really saying, Nadine, is that we have to give up the illusion of control. We never actually had control. We've been living in a digital world for a few decades now. We've been living in a world dominated by knowledge workers for decades now, where we actually have control, but we pretend that we did, and we created reports and systems and structures and committees to give us the illusion of control. Now that we were all forced to work from home for a few weeks, and have all of those systems removed, the spotlight of COVID has shown us we've got way less control than what we did. And we've got to learn working that don't need control. So this leads then to my second point. That's just an example. There are lots of things we could talk about becoming adaptive. But the second point, to just briefly finish with, reimagine our organization. We had to improve Caterpillar, right? Make a better caterpillar. You might think a better caterpillar is a bigger, fatter, juicier caterpillar. So that's what we do. Or maybe you're thinking like a bird when you think that way. Maybe we more need to think like a caterpillar. A better caterpillar is a smaller, leaner, faster caterpillar. Maybe it's more colorful, maybe it's colorful. Some of you are ahead of me on this example, right? Because if all you try to do with a caterpillar is improve the characteristics that already exist, well, then you will obviously not get yourself a butterfly. A better caterpillar is a butterfly. This is where many of your organizations find themselves right now. You're in the middle of a COVID crisis that has forced you to change completely. Your strategy's out the window, your budget is a waste of paper, you've got to change this year, and now you've got two options. One, you can try and get back to normal as soon as possible, or you can take the invitation of this crisis to reimagine your business, to reimagine it as a more adaptive business that is better at dealing with disruption, so that when the next disruption comes your way, you are much more prepared for it and your organization takes it in its stride. Nadine, that's what I help people to do, to build adaptive organizations, build adaptive leadership skills so that they can survive. Right now, we need it more than ever in the COVID world, but I think we're going to need it for the rest of this decade and beyond as well. After COVID is gone, we're going to live on the same planet, but it's definitely going to be a different world, and we can start preparing for that now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that was, so honest, that people need to have that dose of reality, but you do it in such a calm way, because actually crisis, if you handle them well, it's all about the backstory. So you can always prepare for crisis. It's how you communicate through the crisis as well. And I think you're right, actually. We were so excited about 2020s, it just sounded so good, but we're in for a pretty tough decade. I think what's interesting, actually, when I was looking at your profile on the Speakers Corner website, is the idea that you pull together the customer service, the innovation, and the technology, because they often sit in silos. And if you crack that code, what you're talking about becomes a reality. But too often, they are in silos, aren't they? So how can we help people watching and the clients that you speak to overcome that so they work harnessed together?
Well, I think right now there are two things that any leader or manager in an organization could focus their attention on. And many of the other speakers today have highlighted this and given details of how to do it. The first is focus almost entirely on customer value. What do customers really, really need right now? Not what were they buying from us, not, how do we do more of what we were doing, but what is the need of my customer? Of course, you have to speak to your customers and ask them that question. And not ask them to buy more of your stuff. Ask them, what do you really need now? What is the value I can give you? And I think that question will unlock a whole lot of things. In terms of how you engage and respond to customers. You may not be able to help your customer with some of the value that they're needing, but maybe you can point them somewhere and they will remember that you assisted them. But their answer to your question, what is the value you need right now, can also unlock a whole lot of innovation and creativity and adjustment from you. The second thing you can do as a leader or manager right now is to deal with the frustrations of your own team, the internal frustrations. Work is frustrating. And there are all sorts of things, whether it's just the fact that the printer is on the other side of the building and you've always got to click 3 different things to find the printer in the network and get it out, or bigger frustrations around how many layers of approval are required. It's the way things are done around. We heard from Steph and Steve earlier talking about that's just how it's done. You know what, in the moment we're in at the moment now, in this COVID disruption time, you've got a beautiful opportunity to just say all bets are off, right? We can do things differently now. And we are doing things differently now. And so look at the frustrations you have had, look at the frustrations you've got, and refuse to ignore them. And simply say, let's fix them now. I'll give you a practical example, Nadine. There's a whole lot of people I'm speaking to are saying, I can't wait to get back to the office. They don't mean they want to get back into rush hour traffic. That's a horrible thing to imagine in the commute, but they want to get back to the office. My question is, why? And they all say the same thing. I'm sure you'd say this. I need to connect with people. So then I say, well, how often did you connect with people before? If you remember, I remember way back in January when you used to go to the office. And most of them pause for a second and say, you're right. You can go into the office, spend the whole day on your computer and go home again. And here's what you need to be doing, to say, what am I romanticizing already after just a few weeks, romanticizing about the office? Let's make sure we get that back to the office. Let's not go back to normal, just go back to how things were. Let's actually say, what do we really want to get from the office, and let's make sure we get it. And if you take that attitude to the next few weeks and months, you're going to come out the other side of this crisis in much better shape than even going into it, let alone now.
I think it is a golden opportunity. I think the environmental pressures that we've seen over the last decade and that are coming down the track as well, it's a perfect opportunity. I mean, we've seen how we've done things differently, how pollution rates around the world have dropped, and it's about seizing that moment. I think, as well as wanting to connect with people, I think it depends on whether the people who want to go back to the office have got young children or not. Fortunately, my children are much older now, and I think it would have been a very different experience.
Yeah.
But
you know, Nadine, that's actually a very important point. And this again reiterates what I'm trying to say. I don't think we're in the middle of a work from home revolution. I think we're in the middle of a work from anywhere revolution. So I agree with you about older kids. It's been lovely. They do all the cooking. Fantastic. If you've got younger kids, not so fun. But I don't think that the people say, well, I don't really want to work from home. I don't think they're saying by default, I want to go back to the office. I think we have disconnected ourselves from the office during this COVID crisis. And I think that will be a lasting legacy of COVID, that now the default setting will be, I can work from anywhere, and I will, and maybe I'll come to the office if there's really a compelling reason to. I think that will change a lot of things in the next decade.
I think you're right there. Got a few comments coming in very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
The inverted pyramid is the way that the people at the coalface with the real experience and authority works best, in my opinion. Yeah, you agree with that one. And there's a lady, Marlene van Ruyen. Hopefully I've said your name correctly. Huge apologies if I haven't. Thanks, Graeme. Always enjoy you. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Marlene.
And then AK is saying, thank you, Graeme. It's always fascinating. I love what you said about companies and their customers. The days of desperately screaming, buy my stuff, are over. Best, Akai. Is it Akai? Hopefully I've said again. Huge apologies if I'm getting these names incorrectly, but we're getting the questions out there. So Graeme, thank you so much for your time. And we're actually going to be sticking with South Africa. Obviously, if you need any more details on Graeme, speak to the guys in the office. I know Dan and Nick are already taking the calls. They're beavering away together at HQ. And you can get the full biogs of the likes of Graeme and all his other fellow speakers online at Speakers Corner's website. Well, and that goes into the full details, all the awards, amount of experience, into some top-rated keynote speakers today, not least Graeme. Thank you, Graeme. So next up, we're going to stay with South Africa, and I'm delighted to say I can see my next keynote speaker on screen. Absolutely.
Hi, Nadine.
Hello there. And it's Rapelang Rabana, and it's wonderful to be here. And I know you're going to be talking about digital mastery, making digital technologies work for your business. And just a little bit on you. You're an internationally renowned technology entrepreneur. You've amassed, I know, over 15 years experience building innovative technologies. So much so that you've been named entrepreneur for the world, not just South Africa, oh no, for the World Entrepreneurship Forum. It's such a hard thing to say. We bow down to you.
Long thing. Thank you so much, Nadine.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Q&A.
Great. My name is Rapelang Rabana, and I'm one of those people you probably consider a digital native of sorts. And I'm grateful actually for these COVID times because it's gotten everyone talking about my favorite topic, digital tech, digital this and that. And even those who had tried to avoid it for the longest of times, they had to start talking about it. So what does it really mean to be a digitally transformed business? What does it mean to be a digital business? Wherever you've landed up in your thinking over the last few months, if you're on the right track, you've probably started to realize that it's less about technologies and much more about people. In the 15 years of building tech, from my first startup, Diego, straight out of university, to being the chief digital officer at one of South Africa's largest IT companies, I have learned that the most important thing you can do when it comes to anything digital is to skip over all of those fancy terms and jargons, rather take a step back, understand the human behaviors that are driving everything behind the scenes. And it's not about IoT and AI. When you understand the behaviors and drivers behind these things, it's a whole lot easier to figure out where technology is going and how to apply it to your organization and to your life context. So Nadine, for today's session, I really want to give you 3 almost superpowers that you can use when you think about technology. And I want you to sort of step away from any previous thoughts that you've had. I want you to go in your mind's browser, clear your cache, delete your history, and navigate to a blank web page for this conversation. I'm going to give you 3 superpowers. 1, the ability to follow the human drivers. 2, the ability to escape your limiting beliefs. And 3, cultivate new. So let's get going, right? What do I mean by following the human drivers? Let's reflect on what's causing this change in our lives. What's driving this relentless activity to constantly generate new technologies, new ways of doing that, new words? Why can't we just sit, pipe down and chill? From as far back as I can see in all the reading I've ever done, from before the first industrial revolution through all the industrial revolutions to the advent of the modern era today, the constant thread, everything together, has been this almost indomitable need to do more, to produce more of industrial materials, of clothes, of houses, of cars, more everything, while using less resources, less time, less energy, less money. And the only way to stretch those resources further, to stretch that a little bit further, is to invest in producing more efficiently through new technologies. And what is actually required to help us produce more efficiently? It's quite simple, actually. To be able to do something better and more efficiently than you've ever done before, you need to actually understand and see what happened before. You need to be able to look at the factors that affected things and diagnose what went well, what went wrong, and extrapolate those factors into the future to see what would happen if you changed this or that. And that allows you to predict the future and execute a better outcome. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the human behavior that drives big data, machine learning, AI. This human behavior isn't just something that started with digital technologies, not at all. It's always been there, except that, before we wanted to get information about what happened, you would talk to people. You would measure things manually. You would use meters. You would visualize and interpret that data in diagrams, reports, pictures. You might have been able to produce sophisticated Excel models that allowed you to integrate that data and help you make a decision to a better outcome. That human drive to understand and improve so we can produce more efficiently is simply now translated into digital technologies that help us first to see and track what's happening. And that's why we've got stuff like, RFI tags or sensors or cameras or any of those IoT things. We then connect all of these things that help us see to companies' ERP systems, to mobile apps on our phone, to the cloud, and allow us to visualize and interpret that data. We take all of that data and create 3D models or digital twins of that so that we can play around with the factors in different scenarios to see what different outcomes result in without having to actually wait. From an app that a hairdresser or a salon might have to be able to track where their customers came and when they next need a treatment, to kind of Fitbits and fitness wear on our watches and that help us better understand being, to the kind of smart factories out there that can track when a machine needs to be repaired and taken out of service, to smart hospitals that ensure that they have maximum full utilization at all times. It's all about, and if you look at it carefully, it's all about how we see what is happening better, how we easily understand that so that we can exploit any inefficiencies and fix them and make better decisions ultimately. This is the #1 human behavior that is driving change in all industries and will continue to drive change in future industries as well. This is just one of the drivers. I mean, there's so many others. There's drivers in how we build trust in information in each other so that we can trade and engage with people that we don't know. There's human drivers around how, despite physical distance and gaps in time, we still seek the intimacy of in-person conversations. It's about the human behavior that drives our need for convenience to get a service in just the right quantity at just the right time at my preferred place and circumstance. All of these behaviors, create whole technologies and industries, but that's for another. What I really want you to take away from this conversation is to recognize that by following the human behavior, you can track where the technology is going and what it's really looking to solve. This leads us to superpower number 2, escaping your limiting assumptions. Your limiting assumptions are those very things that will prevent you from separating yourself from your current reality and following those human trends that I've just mentioned. Most of us, sadly, don't realize that we spend our entire lives in a self-created box, a bell jar that determines so much of our behavior, how our brain is wired, how we see the world. So much so that we are not aware that we are only seeing one view of the world. The biggest block by far and away to creativity and innovation results from people's broad acceptance of the status quo. I even say a deep emotional connection to the way things are, a blind adherence to this is how the world works. And the one major benefit from COVID-19 is that it has forced us to see that that status quo can change very dramatically and very quickly. That the things we held constant and permanent are actually probably not that permanent. This is fertile ground for innovation. Space for innovation is created when we become aware that our perception of a fixed reality, when we notice that our assumptions are just that, and we realize that they're malleable and we release our minds from them. Now is the time to recognize those arbitrary habits and beliefs that guide how we live and work and open our minds to new possibilities. What are the assumptions that you hold in your mind? And are they still true? What are the assumptions you hold about where you will find your future customers, how they will make their buying decision? The assumptions about the value you perceive they get from your product or service, the assumptions about what they did before and after they interacted with your company, the assumptions about why they will really stay with you. I recently bought a car, and in that experience, I saw the complete misalignment of world perspectives and assumptions, I guess. The sales rep, in fairness, did a good job for the person they assumed I was. You see, I'm from that customer segment that knows nothing about cars, that doesn't really seek to know anything about cars, and if I could avoid buying one altogether, I would. So I don't really get all the fanfare that they do in the dealerships about getting a car and getting all that hype going on. I would have much rather preferred to do most of the purchasing decision online. Maybe even if the car was dropped off at my house, it would have been great, much like a dishwasher. And I don't think I'm the only one, as crazy as that might seem, but it intrigues me how little the car market caters for this segment. Because let's face it, most of the people who work in the automotive sector have some kind of deep affinity to cars. And so there are assumptions in their minds that they can't get past when it comes to buying cars, and why they create the experience in line with their own assumptions. Our entire life is made up of assumptions, and over years and decades, it starts to look like the truth. And that is why it is so hard to change how things work, why we sell the products we do, and how we can actually change and improve them. The final power, Nadine, that I want to leave you with today is the ability to cultivate new ways of work so that you can get stuff done. And this links quite strongly to messages that Geoff was sharing. You have probably done the work maybe to follow those human behaviors, to uncover and overcome those limiting assumptions, but the big establishment makes it difficult to get things done. An important step to facilitating innovation in a large organization is to stop thinking about the business as one monolithic structure, but to rather organize it into different parts. You can't do away with the core business that is focused on driving operational efficiencies for the short term. And the large corporate can't become a startup. It's more about creating a space in the middle for practical agility, where you can drive new initiatives. This is the space for digital collaboration, rather, connecting you to innovators inside the business, external innovators in the ecosystem and startup community, where you can jointly invest in new initiatives and projects that could ultimately plug in to the engine or be spun out. The digital business of the future is the one that encompasses both the innovation and entrepreneurial abilities, as well as the operational capabilities. If you're too focused on the innovation piece, you're not getting to scale and results. If you're too focused on the operational component, you're not getting new things coming, and you risk becoming irrelevant in many cases. It is in that space of practical agility that you've got to create a space that is not about hierarchy, that is cross-functional teams working together, that are able to have conversations of radical candor. And this is the critical step to being able to overcome and surface your own limiting assumptions. It's incredibly hard to break out of divisions and silos in big corporations, and you can't overhaul an operating model overnight. But what you can do is organize short-term, cross-functional teams focused on solving a specific problem in the business or generating ideas for a new product. And instead of coming out with a 30-page business plan or another long PowerPoint deck, coming out with something that you can actually test with customers to get real data from, genuine feedback. And in this way, facilitating these kind of sprints is probably the best shift that you can make as an organization. And in my work in teams, them through this shift of focusing data from the probably the most important step. Most corporates are still stuck in the idea of hippo-style decision-making, which really means the paid person's opinion versus client's feedback. In this new digital business and new world, your customer is 100 times, if not 1,000 times, more important than your boss's opinion. The organization and every decision you make needs to reflect this, should be directed at this. So don't focus on chasing waterfalls of long business plans and multi-year projects before you see any results. Rapid focus sprints are the way to go. They bring customers into the conversation earlier and structure your organization and initiatives around the customer's value streams. And this is going to be a big determinant of who does well in this coming period. So these three superpowers, Nadine, the ability to follow the human drivers, to escape your limiting assumptions, and cultivate new ways of work, will incredibly accelerate your capacity to build those digital businesses that are adaptive and responsive. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm glad I've got some new superpowers. I've always wanted those.
There we go.
Yeah, and that makes real sense, actually. It's quite incredible, actually, because having sort of been on the conference circuit for nearly 30 years, what struck me is that those businesses, nearer the customer, have got the digital space, I'm generalizing now, so much better because they understand that end customer. Yet we've had these sort of innovative tools in our pockets, certainly the last 10 years, and we certainly appreciated them for the last 3 to 4 months. Yet there's still some dinosaurs out there, some businesses and industries where I'm not going to name shame.
You can't do that here.
Embrace digital transformation. So, I mean, you've talked about getting closer to the customer as probably the starting point, but if you are those businesses, well, actually, do you know what, we haven't fully utilised those the 5G around the corner. Wow, that Internet of Things is really going to come a reality. Where should people start?
Sure. I think a lot of the time when businesses start, they actually did build the right tools to service the customers well. But as time changes, that goalpost has moved forward. The way to solve the customer problem now has to change and catch up. And we don't take the time to realize, oh my word, let's get back to the core problem that the customer was facing. And let's figure out how to solve that problem in a fundamentally new way. I mentioned in my example how we used to allowed us to solve a problem to a certain extent. Now with digital technologies, we have to be able to collect and see even more, be able to interpret and model what's happening in our customers' environments to an incredible amount of detail so that we can solve that problem at an even better level. And this is where we kind of get stuck because it worked so well in 20, 30 years. Now you've got to stop that and say, actually, maybe a deeper way to solve it. And you'll find that there's the resistant pocket, these organizations already that are shouting for this, but they're probably not being heard, and there isn't a space and a mechanism for those ideas to come out. And instead of waiting for your big restructure to end in 3 years' time, this is where those short-term rapid design sprints are so key to get the ball rolling and get some runs on the board.
Indeed. And how do you encourage that innovation? No matter what size the business is,
Yes.
Having an department, which sometimes is not the most effective approach.
No.
Everyone has a voice, because I know you mentioned about bringing the customer in, but if you've got millions of customers, there's only so much that you can do in order to tailor your offering. You can't listen to everybody, or can you?
It's yes and no. I think the beginning of these processes is to look at those cross-functional teams. And Graeme mentioned how it's a mix of authority and responsibility. So it's not about people with the authority in the room, but people that are most in contact with the challenge or the problem that you're facing, and all the people they ever interact with to try and solve it. Most of the time, they've never had an opportunity to be in the same room together without having to defer to some of you to allow X and Y to happen. So creating that and a mechanism for people who haven't worked together before to now work together is sort of the most basic starting point. And there's that good facilitation of that session helps the conversation get going, people to bridge those gaps. At the point when you actually have something to show your customer, it doesn't matter that you've got millions of customers. If you can just engage with the 10 or 20 the beginning of a sense, everybody says no, that this is a dead end. Instead of saying, we'll know when we hit 1,000, you can start with every single customer's voice and get that feedback, take that data, put it into your thinking, readjust, and move forward from there. You're never going to be done. And you're going to have to keep taking in that data and reflecting and adjusting. And I think shifting from that notion of the product is finished, let's ship it, to we've interacted with these customers, let's fix it for now, let's interact with more customers later, fix it further, and keep on going. That's the digital business.
Indeed, and there are the tools to feedback as well. So you're very simple to ignore them. We've got a quick comment in here. It says, yes to buying online, even cars. It's from Rosalie McCartney. I'm loving the backdrop as well. I take it's a public building, or is it your own private library?
No. I thought I would come and find an expansive place to share the talk with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so lovely to have you. Thank you so much. And obviously, right, well, we're going to go to Ireland now. This is our first trip to Ireland of the day. And I'd like to say our next guest is Sean Weafer. And we're going to be looking at how prolonged periods of separation and change can take a toll on any professional or team's motivation and productivity. And I know Sean is an international leadership coach and mentor, and that includes specialising in sales and leadership communications, as well as driving team and individual performances. Sean, are you there, my lovely?
I am indeed, Nadine. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I do love an Irish. You could say nonsense and I'd be impressed.
Well, that might be most of my presentation afternoon, so you're okay. That's good.
I'm sure it won't be. So remember to keep your questions coming in, and if you've got a question for Sean, put down Sean's name. And how are things with you, Sean, in Ireland?
All good. Enjoying a lovely sunny day here in Dublin town. So all set and enjoying all our presentations. I want to thank all the speakers we've had so far today. I want to thank you for a wonderful job as a remote MC. It's always a challenging job. And of course to the guys in Speakers Corner for helping us put all this together for you.
Oh, you're so polite. You'll go far in life.
Thank you very much.
Your time starts. Good luck.
Okay, thank you, Nadine. I want to thank earlier Graeme's presentation was concise. It was also scary. The fact that we're going to face this kind of disruption from now on is something we all need to be aware of. And this issue of motivation is something I want to talk about because it goes to the heart of human behaviors, either as leaders or indeed in the space of sales. So one of the major issues we're facing in the current crisis is that managers now have to cope with what we call a blended managed environment. So huge has been the change in our work environments. This blended management environment is how we now need to manage people and indeed sell to people, which is even more challenging in this situation where people are working remotely or they're working virtually, or you'll also have a mix of people who, as time progresses, will be working from the office as well. So how do we cope with this? And the one thing that massive change like this is guaranteed to do is seriously impact on your level of motivation, your desire to make change or to get things done. So what I want to do in this very short presentation is talk a little about motivation, the types of motivation, why it's important, the sort of things that impact on that, and what we can do to massively drive it. Because as a leader, it's critically important that you're not only capable of motivating yourself, but you're capable of motivating the team. And particularly now, the team is distributed and working from home, or as Graeme said, working from anywhere, as the case may be. And this will be the new normal. So these are the skill sets that in the past leaders may not have required in terms of motivation, because they would have used a very different style of management. They would have used what we call the old masculine style, the command and control style. They would have been called directors because they directed people to. No longer. Today, we need to become much more effective at facilitation, at coaching, and at orientating people in a powerfully effective way and aligning their own personal motivation with the goals of the organization or of the team. So what is motivation? What drives it? I like to call motivation in action. It means you have a clear purpose, a clear outline, and then you have to power that focus or that outcome with your emotions. Now, in our physiological systems, we have a thing called our neurology, and our neurology is where our emotions run. So it's critically important. It's one thing having a clear focus, but unless that focus has a passionate impetus behind it, a real powerful value for getting there, we're very, very unlikely to make that change. So motivation is when we put a motive together with the energy or the power or the emotional resonance needed to drive that objective to its final conclusion. So is motivation important for a leader? Why is motivation important for a salesperson? Well, from a leader, we have two things we have to worry about. One, we have to motivate ourselves. In the current crisis, there's been lots of things to depress our motivation, affect our motivation, and I'll go through some of those a little later on. But here's the other thing. We don't just have to motivate ourselves. We also have to motivate our team. We have to maintain their consistent performance when now we're working with them at a distance. We're working with them in virtual environments. We're working with them and constantly on Zoom calls and becoming Zoomified in the process. And what's really important is our motivation immediately and directly impacts on theirs. And here's why. Our expectations of leaders drive the behaviors of our team members. And the reason is if we as a leader or manager come across as demotivated or unfocused, our teams model our behavior. They want to be like us because they know that we will judge them or make an assessment of them at some point in the future. So they're looking to build trust and rapport with us. So often they will motivate the behaviors that we express ourselves. So our motivation needs to be high in order to set the expectations to get the best out of our teams. From a salesperson's perspective, well, I think we're all aware of the professional salesperson world. They live lives of constant rejection interspersed by moments of blissful triumphs. Well, those blissful triumphs have become further and harder and fewer in the modern world because as we're trying to find new models of how we engage with brand new clients, it's driven that motivation down to its lowest depth. So we need to find ways to improve that from our sales perspective because sales absolutely are the lifeblood of business. No sale, no business. That's what happens. So let's talk about the types of motivation that we face. And for this, we come back to a concept by a well-known, in fact, the father of psychoanalysis called Sigmund Freud. And Freud said that people move away from pain and toward pleasure. So we move away from difficult, dangerous, challenging situations, and we move towards more pleasurable, stable situations. Now, there is a small proviso to this, and this is this. People usually don't like change. In fact, our unconscious mind will work against us to make change happen unless we give it a sufficiently pleasurable, beneficial reason in order to make that change. How do I know this? Well, part of my training is as an analytical hypnotherapist and as a psychotherapist. So I know what motivates people deep down in terms of their professional selves. So this concept is that moving away from pain and toward pleasure leads us into two fundamental areas. And just talking about management, traditional management used what we call away from or pain-based motivation. It was sort of beatings will continue until morale improves type approach. And that was fine as long as the team was immediately around you. You could see them, you control them, you could touch them. But in today's distributed world, that doesn't work anymore. We have to find ways in which we facilitate or we coach or we get with people, we work as advisors to our team members in order to help them build their motivation and put really powerful, positive reasons why they should do things for us as a team. Now, the away from motivation is where we want to get away from something. There's a pain situation, so we want to move away from that. Now, that has a place when it comes to self-care or protecting ourselves. We need to move away from dangerous situations quickly. But the problem with using that kind of motivation in leadership or sales is that it's short-term and it's high pressure. It does not last in the longer term, and it does not drive long-term performance. So the kind of motivation we're looking for is toward motivation, where we build this powerful, pleasurable reason for us to get to a particular point in time. That kind of motivation is much more internally focused, and it's longer term and far more positive, particularly in terms of our physiology. High stress causes cortisol to be released in the body. That dampens our immune systems and makes us tired and fatigued and therefore less driven to affect change. It also means that our immune system being dampened, we're more open to catching illnesses and becoming well in the process. But positive toward motivation, moving towards something that we perceive as pleasurable, as profitable, is a very different kind of motivation. And that's where individuals will take responsibilities for their own actions and drive themselves to get to where they need to do in order to drive the performance of the team. So these are the two things we need to think about: away from motivation or toward motivation, which is what we should be looking to develop in ourselves and in our teams. So what are the sort of things that damage our motivation? I think being aware of that is really, really important. So I want to talk about three things that damage our motivation. The first is lack of focus. So if we don't have a clear goal, if we don't have absolute clarity on where we want to go and what we want to do, and even more importantly, why we want to make that happen, what happens is we get into a period of confusion. We start creating a sense of helplessness around us. And the problem with helplessness, the problem with confusion, the problem with stress is that we revert to, we have a thing called recidivism. We fall back to doing what is comfortable for us. We go back to our comfort zones. We go back to what's easy for us. And I heard a wonderful quote. It said that, you know, comfort zones are wonderful places, but nothing grows in them. And in today's world, with the amount of massive change we have to face, it's easy to sit back and let the world sort itself out before we engage. But the reality is we are the factors for change. Each and every individual one of us who go out there and affect another person's life, whether it's being of service to people in sales or of service to people in leadership, this is how change will happen. This is how we restore what we once had before. So we can't afford to have a lack of focus. We can't afford to feel confused. We can't afford to feel helpless. The other then is that issue of a lack of sense of control. And what this happens is it creates anxiety. And anxiety is fear of the future. So if we have a lack of focus and a lack of sense of control, we're not going to move things. We're not going to make change. We're not going to be motivated to make the difference we have to make in the world, particularly now as we seek to bring the world back to stasis. And the last element to be aware of in terms of these three things is isolation. Human beings are herd animals. Many of us are dying to get back to speaking to live audiences, connecting in networking events, talking over coffee with people, because that's what we need. We need human touch. And I talk to people about communication, but I say, actually, communications is not really what it's all about. I could communicate with you by shouting at you, but that doesn't mean you'll actually, pick up anything I want to say or agree with me or go along or even be motivated by me. Now, in a human sense, we need to do what I call CIE. We need to connect, we need to influence, we need to engage. We need to create that level of human touch that makes such a radical difference and gets people to want to work with us to accomplish greater things. So the last thing I want to talk about is what I call the 6C model. So these are the things we need to be aware of and how we can boost our own motivation and the motivation of others that we have a responsibility for on our team or in our organization. So the first of those C's is what we call context. Context is our environment. It's what's happening around us. It's the period of change we're going through. And those periods of change cause us to do one of two things. It causes us to be reactive to the world rather than proactive. So if our world, as they currently stand, is that we're reacting, we're firefighting, we're driven by external circumstances, we can never be sufficiently proactive to make change. So to learn to become proactive means that we need to be aware of what's going on around us. But in order to make change, we need to go within. We need to go within ourselves and find out what are those points of motivation, those emotional elements that drive us to make the kind of change whereby we can change our external world. So understanding where your context is first. The second thing is we need to develop clarity. We need to be really clear about what our focus is for the future. And we need to be aware of it on two levels. We need to know what we want to do. And we need to know what our individual team members have to do. And then we need to know why. So knowing what we want to do gives us clarity. That's great. That's a logical reason to do something. But logic is useless unless it's powered by emotion. And emotion is the why. Emotion is the pleasure point. Emotion is the reason to fire up that motive to make change. So clarity is a key part. So context, environment, clarity, your focus is the key element. And what that does is it allows us to work in a situation whereby we can facilitate others, we can affect others, we can build powerful relationships with others, and we can motivate people to move, particularly when we create shared objectives or shared goals. The next thing out of once you've got a clear goal is to break that goal into its individual steps. What are the actions we need to take to make change? Sometimes goals can be so big they can be overwhelming, such as how do I deal with my team working from home? How do I handle this new environment? Well, the easiest way to do that is, okay, this is what I want. I want to more successfully manage my team, or I want to grow the level of clients I'm working with in the current environment because I want to secure my future, or because I want to build my recognition as a leader. So what are the steps that make that happen? Take time to break it into the smallest possible elements it could possibly be. Call Mary, set a meeting with Geoff, draft a list. The smaller you can make it, the greater the sense of control that you will have over what you do. And you'll suddenly find that even the greatest of goals, even the largest of objectives, can be reached by taking small steps. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you want to massively change your motivation, what you need to do is be clear about what you want to do and why. Understand what are the steps that make that happen, because now you have a sense of control. What does control do? Gives us a huge level of confidence. Confidence is powerful. Because when we're feeling confident, guess what? We become much more convincing in our communication. We become much more congruent. And guess what? Much more compelling when it comes to raising the boats of the people around us to accomplish the goals we can as an organization or as a team. So if our confidence rises, our ability, the fifth C, to communicate effectively, to connect with people, to involve with people, to engage with people, becomes absolutely compelling. That's when we become true leaders. That's when we become people want to buy stuff from. Nobody wants to buy anything from someone who appears desperate. Nobody wants to be led by someone who is unsure and not confident. They want a person who is assertive and assured and confident that where they're going is the right place. And when people see someone like that, they will follow you gladly into a process of co-creation and collaboration and synergy that will profoundly change the environment that they're in. And all of these, the context, the clarity, the control, the confidence, and the communication unerringly leads to a powerful delivery of competence or performance. These are what change things in difficult and challenging times. Motivation is not some woo-woo concept. It is something anyone can claim once they choose what they want and why it's compellingly important to them. Stay focused, stay positive, practice gratitude because it it empowers positive elements in the brain. The brain, actually, interesting, is 7 times more susceptible to negative news than it is to positive news. And that's why it's more important that we listen to the positive elements. Cut down your news streams, manage your self-talk, communicate more effectively with your team by setting up WhatsApp or Slack groups. Texts are more effective than emails. Your Zoom group meetings, give other people responsibility to do that. There's so much you can do inside that 6C model around communication, clarity, and control. So all I can wish you is hopefully that's brought some value and the very best of luck in challenging times. And here's to the new normal.
Someone had to mention the 2 N's, the new normal. And you're so right, actually, that motivation word, which has been banded around over the years. But for me, getting through the last 3 or 4 months, it's all been down to what I wanted my motivation to do. And after digesting that news, for some people it took longer. It took me a couple of weeks to get over the fact that actually we might be in the long haul for this. So just get used to it and adapt and bring out that positivity. I know it's different for different people. People have different motivations. But I think motivation has been the key thing that's certainly got me through this. And I know the other people that I've spoken to. So they're very wise words. And I also liked when you spoke about command and control structures. I mean, one would hope they're dying out now as the baby boomers, well, the Generation X's are still around. But as those millennials take over, they're used to those sort of flatter structures. And I think the last 3 or 4 months, we've seen those flatter structures having to take shape anyway, because people have had to have more control. Has that given people motivation in the clients that you've spoken to, that they've had to do it?
I think whether it's given them more motivation, I'm not sure it's given them more motivation. Obviously, as a coach working with managers and leaders and salespeople, motivation comes up a lot of the time. I think real challenge for them in terms of helping them with the motivation is around communications. People, and they're under pressure, tend to work in a much more dictatorial or director or command and control approach because they themselves are fearful. They themselves are lacking clarity. So the real skill, particularly now that everybody needs to be learning, how do I become more of an advisor to my team? So I wrote a book a number of years ago called A High Trust Advisor. So how do we build high levels of compelling engagement with people such that we now work with people in a collaborative manner, a synergistic manner, a co-creative manner? That's the key. And a lot of that comes from what's going on within ourselves. Are we clear? Are we sure? Are we confident? And do we have the communication skills necessary to do that? And where I find people fall down a lot around communications is in presenting, in networking, and in influencing language, like using questions effectively.
Yeah, indeed. And you use those questions effectively. I did notice that. I took note. Got a lovely comment here. Chandra from India loved the connect, influence, engage message for leaders to motivate their teams. And of course, the 6 C's. Sean, what did CIE stand for again? That's Gareth from Wales. Just wants a bit of clarity on that.
Yeah, C is connect. So do more than communicate. Don't do more than talking at people. Find ways of working out what's important to people. Connect with them. The better you can connect with them, the more you can influence them. And the more you influence them in a positive way, the more you engage with them. And you win loyalty, collaboration, and co-creation, and you accomplish amazing and fantastic things with your team.
Indeed. And on this Speakers Corner website, I noticed on your biography, it talks about you developing the High Trust Advisor leadership and sales programs, which you've mentioned, to turn experts into highly trusted advisors, collaborators, and co-creators in leadership and sales roles. And, you know, for you, what has been sort of the greatest success over the last 3 months?
I think learning how to use Zoom. It's a very different process than being yourself in the room. Particularly challenging as a conference speaker, where you're used to getting the energy from, you know, the audience. You know, you see their reaction, you see where you're going. In most cases, you're just looking at yourself. So you better like yourself if you're looking to educate. So Zoom is huge value, but I have to say it's been an interesting period of reflection in terms of who I am, what I do, where I go, and it's helped me finish a couple of new books I've been working on as well, which has been great.
Always motivated. Looking forward to those books. Sean, the best of luck, and give our love to Ireland. It's been lovely having you on the programme. Okay, well, we've got our last solo speaker before we finish with a double act. And I'm delighted to say that we're going to now go to the United States of America. And my next guest is Wittenstein, who is a top keynote speaker. He's got over 3 decades experience, and he pioneers the use of story in business. And he's shown hundreds of leaders how to use stories to win buy-in as they introduce their most important ideas. Mike, hello there, all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. Great to have you here. How things are doing for you? Are you 5 hours or 7 hours behind? Whereabouts are you?
We are 5 hours behind. 5 hours behind. So it's about 9:30 in the morning here. So just getting started on the day, and already so excited from hearing the last few speakers.
Yeah, indeed. Well, you got your pajama bottoms on probably still.
I can stand up with confidence. I did not do that today.
Mike, the floor is yours. Good luck. I'll see you back in 15 minutes.
This is such an exciting time, and no matter where you are or what you do, now's the time for you to be a leader. I read a number of years ago that there were about 500 people who ran things on planet Earth, 500 leaders. Now we need like 50 million leaders. And I'd like to share with you some thoughts about story. Story is something that can help your voice be heard louder and help you lead better. But let's put a couple of things into perspective first. It's been only 17 years, and we've already been through 3 seismic events. We've been through 9/11, the Great Recession, and now we have the coronavirus pandemic. And each time, everything changed, everything. And you know what? Each time, nothing was the way it was going to be ever after that. So what we've got now is a world where everything will be first of a kind. And that means that we need a different kind of leadership. What we've got now is a situation with first of a kind where everything is absolutely brand new. Everyone's on Zoom. We've got different patterns in our life, different responsibilities. Some of us are working, some of us aren't. But what people are looking for is best practices, and those don't exist yet. Everyone's got to figure this out on their own. Rapelang talked about that with the sprints. The thing is that a lot of your leaders are looking for what to do, but there are no best practices. What they want to do is they want to hear from you that you believe in them. They want to know that there's something else to believe in. And the cool thing is that stories are what let people connect. So there are a couple of storytellers that I wanted to share with you who I think have done a really good job at motivating us to move forward. John F. Kennedy said that when we send a man to the moon by the end of the decade and return him safely, and that launched the whole space race in 1962. But the thing is the capability of space travel didn't exist yet. What JFK did is he willed it into being with a speech. Let's hear a couple of his words.
If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth.
So what Kennedy did is he gave people reasons to believe. You may not have the power of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration behind you, but you can tell a story. And today we're going to talk about how to do that. Don't worry, all the components that you need are already inside of you. But stories are the things, like Sean said, that move people, that include them, that spark them, and that stir their hearts. There's one more storyteller in more modern time that's made a huge difference. And I think you know who he is. Signature jeans and a black shirt. Steve Jobs literally, and his company, changed the world. Let's take a look at how he did it.
So, 3 things. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it?
So what Jobs did is didn't just talk about make-believe. You know, Kennedy, when he made his future story speech, talked about what was to come. But Jobs did something very different. And this is one of your two options. You can make the future before you talk about it. You can help people to believe it because they can see it with their own eyes. What he did was the hard work before he made the big announcement. He put 3 devices, 3 different technologies into a single device, which made it much more valuable for us. He got the largest telecommunications company in the world, AT&T, to change the way they develop products and services, to even change the pace of the organization on the inside to support the introduction of the iPhone. And Apple created the App Store. So what his story did was give us these superpower feelings to work and live better. If you listen to that whole keynote speech, it was filled with examples of what you could actually do with the device. And people felt empowered instantly, and of course the desire grew. That was masterful storytelling and what Steve Jobs was known for so long. That is really the power of story. So as a leader, you can pick either kind of future story to work with. You can pick the kind that Kennedy did, where you rally the troops and you get people excited about what they can do. You paint a really clear and compelling vision of the future. Or you can do what Jobs did, and you can build the future first and then announce it. Interestingly, one of the things that the folks at Apple did was to build user stories. They actually started thinking about what their customers wanted first. They put value into that, and that's how they came up with a lot of the design for the iPhone. So a future story has a few components to it. It is set in the future. So here's the thing. When you're telling a future story, you don't have to start building a bridge and helping people feel more comfortable about the future. You need to let them come to it. You need to let them make the discovery. You and your teams probably have some ideas already about what it's like or how you'd like it to be. You just need to step into that and flesh that out a little bit more. The other thing is, instead of talking to other people, you need to talk about them. They need to be the ones that are in the center of the story. You tell the story from their point of view. I'm sure you can imagine some teachers in your life that just enraptured you. And a lot of the speakers today were talking not to you, but with you. You felt like you were in conversation, even though the communication was in one direction. That's one of the secrets of really good future storytelling. The other is it makes people feel comfortable because you never declare their weaknesses. You point out continuously, time after time, how this new thing, whatever's in your future, is going to make people feel more comfortable. They're going to like that. They're going to lean into that. Then you tell them what part of it they have to play. And that's where they get excited about helping you build what that future is. So your story can get so much stronger when you bring your audience all the way into it. So there are 6 elements in building a future story. The first one is customer focus. Customer focus is all about making sure that your entire business is dedicated to creating value for your customers. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't make money for your shareholders, or if you're a founder that you don't get to take home a nice paycheck. It just means that from the design of the business, you want to put creation value for customers first. Prioritize that. That's one of the secrets to making a future story work. As Sean said before, people need to know what their why is. And if you make the why about making money or hitting a quota, not too many people are going to be interested. If you make the why about making the world a better place or making your customers' lives better, they're 100% with you. The second thing is to include emotions. Any story has emotional elements to it. So does any business. So does every single brand on the planet. The way an organization sets up the clues of its business, how its returns work, how emails get sent out on an automatic basis, what happens if there's an exception to the rules, all those little details end up making you feel something. As a leader telling stories to help people arrive at a common future, you need to take those clues into consideration, those unwritten ground rules, as Steve used to call them. And it's to make sure that there's a clear brand feeling that all of the details of your brand and your operations emit. Of course, you've got to declare the ground rules. Now, you don't list them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You make them part of the story that you're telling to your audience. You put them into your future story so people see them as commonplace. And as Graeme talked about, you have to make your business adaptive. And there's a real science to doing that. Rapelang talked about doing sprint teams. There are ways of replacing traditional organizational charts, which are all about command down and information up, with promise maps that indicate the accountabilities that each person has to the other. Basically, a brand is a giant promise-making machine. It makes one big promise to its customers. The business is charged with fulfilling it. Inside of that business, everyone makes promises to each other so that the work of the customer can be done. And that's something else that needs to come through in your future story. Next to last is to craft experiences. Remember we talked about how Apple would create signature user stories. Well, a signature experience is nothing more than an experience that many of your customers, or if you're a leader, many of your employees will have. That signature experience is what people become remembered for, and it's the story that they tell. If you create a really good experience, people are going to tell stories about it. And when they tell their friends and colleagues a story, that's the experience that they're all going to expect. The last point is the most important one of all. It's to make sure that your employees become the heroes of the story. It's all about making the story about them. We're basically talking in every one of the presentations today about how we have to change before our organizations will change. So if you put your employees on a hero's journey path, like a Harry Potter or a Luke Skywalker, they're the one who can make the big things happen. That's what they're going to love. That's what they're going to remember. That's what's going to really draw them in. So how do you write a future story? How do you make it happen? Well, you really can't write a future story. You have to design it. So let's talk about that for just a little bit. First of all, you don't have to be afraid of starting with a blank piece of paper or an empty Word doc. All you have to do is think about what it's like to be like your people. Imagine what their days are like. Imagine what the things are that they care about the most and what they're most worried about, and start designing around that. Because after all, your employees are your customers. Here's some examples of what some other folks have done already, and I'd like you to take a look at the stories of each of these leaders and the points on the left. So one of the things that Kennedy did that was so cool is he got an entire nation engaged in a single story. All kinds of new material science was invented because of that powerful story. The way Congress worked changed because of that story. How people came together, the pride that this created for our country and actually for the entire world, all happened because of a single story. We've already talked about Steve Jobs, but he changed the way his business and his partners' businesses worked in order to deliver that story. We so often talk about low-hanging fruit and quick wins. I think there's a lot more opportunity to tackle much larger projects, and story is one of the tools that you can use to make bigger strides a lot faster by showing people what a big outcome might look like, because people get excited by that. Disney is one of my favorites. Favorite storyteller, favorite business person. I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I was there when Disney World opened on the East Coast in 1971. What was so interesting about story is the company of Disney was based on cartoons, on Mickey Mouse. First film was called Steamboat Willie. But now the Disney empire spans so many businesses. They're on cable, they've got distribution, they do books, comic books, movies, theaters, they're on Broadway. They have even their own cruise ship, not to mention the theme parks. So all of that ties together in story, and you can experience it as you move from one modality into another. Jeff Bezos with Amazon did something similar. He built an entire company based on selling books out of his garage. The story behind it, the value for customers, and always leaning in to imagine the future was cool. To this day, Amazon uses a 6-page brief, up to 6 pages, to clearly identify an idea, and it's often told from the customer's point of view. So story is embedded in their culture. And of course, we all know about Elon Musk. And what he does is he gives people, customers, and employees the opportunities to be the hero in the story of saving the planet. So he does an amazing job at that. So what does all this mean for you? What do you have to do? And this may be really the hardest part, because when it comes to change, what everybody wants is for everybody else to change. The important thing is for you to think a little bit differently. When you think differently, you can actually challenge your own biases. You can start to learn new things. You can lean in and see what makes others think. And that lets you get to better design. Because when you understand your customers and the employees that you serve better, you're able to make decisions for them and not just do things to them. As we heard from several speakers today, context is so important. Context sets the stage for what you're talking about and why it matters. If you can identify the why, you can unleash the power in your employees and in your customers, because you're actually part of the transformation that they're going through. And that's the whole notion of the hero's journey, and why in your stories, it's so important that you make your customers and your employees the hero. If you find yourself talking about yourself, about your product, your brand, your service, you're not on the right track. You've got to find a way to tell that story so that it's all about your customers and they can be the ones to enjoy the history. My wish for all of you is that you just think about where you are going down the path. What's around that corner and where can you try a future story? Remember to let other people play the hero and set others up to discover their own role in making it real. All right, Nadine, back to you.
I think that resonated really well, actually, that customers and employees are the real heroes. And I've seen that so much, particularly over the last 3 to 4 months. Those that have elevated customers and employers have had really the best traction. And when I hear entrepreneurs' stories, they feel so real. It's those larger companies that sometimes they don't feel very authentic. So how can they find that inner voice, that authenticity, so that customers, I don't know, some people don't want to hear about their histories. Being 100 years old may not be relevant to some people, but it may to others.
Yeah. You know what I think happens, and I've been inside of a lot of boardrooms and worked with a lot of large medium and startup brands. And what happens is people start to believe their own dialogue. It's kind of bizarre. So there are 2 things that you can do that are super, super easy to make a difference. The first one is, if you're in a leadership position, you can go out and spend a few hours spending time with your customers right where they are. And if that means going to their office, visiting with them at a coffee shop, or inviting them into the boardroom if you have to, but actually spend time with them and talk with them. The more you listen and the less you talk, the more you're going to learn. My grandmother told me that I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I should use my ears more than my mouth. I've heard that from so many different, ethnic backgrounds. The other thing that you can do is something that I did when I was a kid. When I was 16, I went to Brazil for a year as an exchange student. And by being in a foreign culture, I had all of my cultural crutches knocked out from underneath me. It was hard. It taught me so much. I really got to see the world, myself, from a totally different perspective, different eyes, different emotions. So do some internal exchange programs or exchange programs with your partners. Move people from the front lines to the back office and vice versa. Get one of your shipping clients to send you over an office worker and you send them over an executive to work on the front lines. That creates all kinds of conversations. And it's just a door opener. It's not specific, it's not directed at an outcome, but it does change your perspective. And that lets you set a better context and really understand the people you're talking to better.
Absolutely. And I know your biography is on the Speakers Corner website. You're founder and managing partner at Story Miners, and you've worked with some amazing brands from Delta Airlines, Holiday Inn, IBM, the University of Phoenix, and obviously some pharmaceutical clients in there as well. Is every company unique? Are there certain things that unites them?
Every company does have its own little, its own DNA, its own personality, its own assessment grade, if you will. And what's really important to remember is that you can't copy what another brand is doing. They say that you can't copy somebody else because they're already taken, so be yourself. But the thing is if you're trying to copy somebody else's brand, strategy, operations, or in most cases, best practices, by the time you finish your change and you get to the promised land, they've already moved on. So it's kind of a guaranteed third place strategy. The really cool thing to do, and I love the way you asked the question, is to find out what's unique about you and your brand. And that starts by understanding what your customers need most. And to do that, you've got to double down on the listening and dedicate the brand to creating value for them. It doesn't mean you don't take a profit. It just means from the design of the business, the prioritization of projects, you do what adds value to the customer as they understand value. It might not be the same thing that you think.
Yeah, that's very wise word. Mike, we could carry on all day, but it's been 240 minutes nearly. We've still got our last segment before we end this show, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Nadine.
To America, and good luck with everything. Earlier on, we saw Geoff and Nigel do solo slots. We're going to bring them together. Oh my goodness, yes, a dynamic duo for a perfect day ending. So we're going to welcome them back to the programme. Now, apparently this is a unique double act. I've never seen them in action before, so it's going to be a first for me. They've inspired audiences across the world, previously on stage. They're now having to do their stuff online, on screen for obvious reasons. So buckle in. Get ready for some fast-paced ideas and techniques to ensure that we have the perfect day. Well, I hope you've had that already, but we have the perfect round to a perfect day. So what more could we possibly ask for? So let's get them out of virtual backstage area and live on screen for the last session of Around the World in 240 minutes. I'm hoping you're there. Geoff and Nigel.
We are here, but very first, Nadine, we have something for you. Nigel? Shall we make a start?
Is it chocolate? It's David Bowie!
You see, if you want to create a perfect day, what you've got to do is create a perfect song for the perfect host who's been moderating for 4 hours unbelievably. Otherwise, what you've got is just what we like. And if you want to create a perfect day, which is what Geoff and I do at the end of a conference, so often I'll start the conference before lunch, he'll do the session after lunch, and we'll both come on to close the day. And what we want to do is create a perfect moment so people leave with a perfect experience. So you shared you like David Bowie. So what did we do? Create a moment just for you. Because that's what perfect...
Crackly David Bowie. It's the perfect moment. As Nigel said, Nadine, we speak all over the world. We speak with clients. I do celebrity service. Nigel does his zookeeping and his impact code. But we often end conferences delivering the perfect day. And the client said, well, what do you mean perfect day? I said, well, look, you've had a great conference. Finish it in the perfect way. We will both come on and deliver the stories, ideas, techniques, so everybody can go away enthused, inspired, and ready to create the perfect day for themselves, for their team, but also their customers. And what we're going to do to round off this amazing Around the World in 240 minutes is share some of our thoughts, our ideas, a quick few takeaways for everybody. So Nigel, what does the perfect day involve? What would you say is the most important?
Well, for me, the most important thing always is about a perfect partnership. You know, you need perfect clients, you need perfect experiences, but you've got to have a perfect partnership. For me, 3.5 years ago, I had a brain aneurysm. My world, I've already lived through it like a COVID moment. So 3.5 years ago, literally Christmas time, my world got shattered. My diary was shattered. I had no work. I couldn't leave the house for 7 weeks, and I had a full diary. So what do? You need to create an experience for your clients. And I was lucky. I had a perfect partner. And this is how it went. Geoff, I've got clients in Brighton, in South Africa. I've got a client in Eastbourne and in Wales. I don't know what you're doing, but you've got to change your diary because I need you to do this for me. Don't worry about the paperwork. I'll sort it out. You need to go. Now, you can only do that if you've got a trusted partner, a perfect partner, someone who knows your stuff. And there's a phrase that says you have to do it by yourself and you can't do it alone. So we've seen over COVID that you need to have people who can support you. Supermarkets have had drivers, restaurants have had Deliveroo and other people. So Nadine, for someone like you, you've got to have someone who supports you. So we have Speaker's Corner. who are supporting us, putting our name out to other people, because we need a support system. So I'm blessed that I have a perfect partner. And then last year, Geoff had a similar incident, which you may want to share.
You forgot about your double brain aneurysm. You just didn't get me to cover you for one set of gigs.
Oh, well, I left that out because last May, after I thought I was all clear, I got rushed back into hospital for an emergency surgery. And I said, Geoff, remember, I thought it was a one-off. It isn't anymore. So
the whole world has had this COVID moment. We're living through it. Many of us are working double time. Some of us are not working. Some, and everything's all over the place. And for those 3 or 4 months, Nigel was just flat out, couldn't do anything. I supported him, and so the client still had a great speaker to deliver on their event, and it was seamless. Last year, my wife had cancer. She's over it now. Big operation. She was amazing. For months on end, it was very, very difficult for our family as well. But Nigel covered me for certain events as well last year. We've had our own COVID moments where we've been stuck, not being able to move. And now we're living it again. And we're quite used to this now. We're quite used to being in the house and having to reinvent and having to recreate. But you go back to that trust. To have a perfect partnership, you need that perfect trust. Person that's going to represent you, will have some fun with the client, will give them some great nuggets and takeaways. And that's the first element of the perfect day, that perfect partnership. And when we do this virtually and when we do this live, we actually get out their phones and say, who is it? Who's your partner? Because if you don't have one, if you can't rely on somebody, then we need to find somebody now, because these moments, COVID moments, can happen at any given time. So we perfect partnership. We talk about the perfect focus. We talk about the perfect experience. We've also talked about the perfect idea. But I think just around this amazing day off, I think we should look at the perfect team, the actual perfect team. Can you give us some thoughts on that?
So, when we look at a perfect team, about 6 or 8 weeks ago, Steph rang me up from South Africa and he said, I want to bring some speakers together. How are we going to do it? And then said, let's do a Saturday live call. And he's going to bring some people in. And I've got a couple of people I want to bring in. And literally this whole day has been put together by having a trusted team. 99% of us have never met each other in total. So I've known Steph for 10, 15 years. He's stayed in my house. I've stayed with his. The question is, who is your team you can rely on 24/7, who you can call in a crisis that's going to allow you and business to expand? Because the world is tiny in the sense that, the world is enormous, but we are tiny parcels in it. And what we have to do is make sure we globally reach out to everyone. So the question is, how do we make sure we do our job properly? How do we make sure we're out there? I've lost my face here, and I've got Steph in the middle of my screen, but don't worry, Steph.
He wants to come in. He wants this. He wants the perfect day triple bill. That's got too many television.
Yeah, but the question always is, if you want a perfect team, you have to trust, you have to engage, and you have to be able to say to your clients, they will deliver. And Geoff and I've done the same with Steph, I've said to my clients, I will guarantee their fee. Just take my recommendation. Don't even worry about it. I'll put it through the bureau. We've done lots of stuff like this, but I'll guarantee their fee. I'm that confident, that comfortable, which all of a sudden gives my business an expanded team of 6, 7 speakers. I can only do one event in one. I apologize. I've done 2 events in the same day in 2 different countries, which is probably why I had a brain aneurysm. But most speakers will do one event in one country. But if you get another booking, what are you going to do? You can't lose the client. It's a relationship. You need to go to your team. So Geoff and I have worked very closely together. We've got another group of people in the UK we work closely together with. And now we've got this consortium that's come together to give world all over the world different aspects. Geoff, back to you.
The perfect. Oh, do you know what? I love the story of the cushions. Can I do one more Star Wars story?
Go for it. You go for it.
You have permission from the higher command.
Right, okay, this is, I've got to tell you this because not many people will know this. So one of the greatest composers in the world is John Williams, right?
Guy? Did he do James Bond theme or not?
No, you've just ruined it now.
Yeah.
That's just the whole story now, but thanks so much, and if you've been a perfect moderator up till now.
No. It happens.
But he's done Schindler's List, he's done Jurassic Park, E.T., all of the ones, maybe it's not James Bond, but Star Wars, Superman, all that type of thing. So John Williams has been nominated, and he's won a lot, been nominated 51 times at the Oscars. 51 Academy, it's stunning, right? So what he's achieved, what he's done. And Star Wars finished in December, where it launched with the Rise of Skywalker movie, and John Williams had never been in a movie. He'd never ever been in the movie, but he appeared for 2 seconds in the Rise of Skywalker. His name, and he doesn't have a speaking part, but his name in the credits is Uma Trez, which is Maestro. It's an acronym. But he appears for 2 seconds. But you can't see anything behind him, but what's behind him is stunning. And the team created a perfect moment for John Williams. So he's been the glue that's held every movie, certainly Star Wars, together for 4 decades. The team took and they made and they built 51 props that from the movies, like the Home Alone iron, like some of the things from Saving Private Ryan. So all of these props, but they put them just in the back on a bookshelf, and he was in front for 2 seconds. And when he looked around, he started to notice these were all of the movies that he had composed. The team wanted to honor him. One of the most wonderful things, Nigel, is you don't see it. You can't pause the DVD and see it because it's not for you, it's not for me, it's not for Nadine, it's for John. And right now, we're Nigel and I are having the same sort of questions coming to us from clients. How do we create a perfect day for our team? Our team are actually nervous about coming back into work. They're nervous about getting on the tube. They're nervous about just being in the office. They're very apprehensive. And what we're saying is create those celebrity service, impact, Zoom keeping, perfect day techniques. So when they walk through the door, they are the superstar. They are made to feel amazing. Now, there's things that you can do before they've arrived. As they arrive after their first day, people are quite nervous right now. So whenever we talk about the team and doing something very special that nobody else sees, we always talk about John Williams. It was stunning what he did, and he actually got his 52nd nomination at the Oscars recently. So I just wanted to sort of share that with you because it was something very, very personal for him not to share the world on Instagram.
Geoff, can I just quickly throw in a question? Would you mind? Because someone did ask earlier that they have to be very careful about giving gifts. And I think you've given a good example that it doesn't necessarily have to be a bought. Obviously, the Bribery Act has been around for a few years. It was introduced.
That's fine. I'll receive anything. It's good.
Yes. The point is, I think someone mentioned that, yeah, you would. But there's some, obviously, people have written in saying, actually, we're not allowed to give gifts because of the Bribery Act, which is an international statute of law introduced in the UK. I'm sounding really dull and boring now, but it is a fact. I think you've shown, actually, that those celebrity moments don't necessarily have to be about spending the dollars on something or the euros.
Nadine, can I share something with you? Have you stayed at a Ritz-Carlton hotel?
Well, yes, and travel lodges, darling, and holiday inns, the lot. I've got to say.
The Ritz-Carlton do something for their staff every single day without anyone knowing it. So their mission statement is, any idea what you think their mission statement might be, Nadine? Go crazy in your thoughts. Put you under pressure here. They're the greatest hotel group in the world, finest celebrity service, make the biggest impact. They don't have a guaranteed card. There's no loyalty card.
Making every stay special.
Yeah, but you see, that's what I thought you'd say, because you're talking about the guests. Their mission statement is, we are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. So we're exceptional people looking after exceptional people. And every day they walk into the hotel, their names are first. Geoff has worked with some amazing companies where there'll be a wall of honor for people who've stayed in an organization day, a week, a month, a year. And instead of these are our favorite clients, these are our favorite staff. This is what our people do. And if you want to create a perfect day for people, you need to understand we come first. You know, you and I are blessed. We get our work from agencies, so we have to look up to our agencies. The agencies have to look after their staff. If you just look after your guests and you have disillusioned staff, you don't have a perfect day. And it's really important for everyone to understand a perfect day starts with perfect families, perfect staff, creating perfect experiences. So all I need to do is I just leave a bar of chocolate like that on someone's chair. Doesn't cost a lot.
I wonder what I've been sitting on.
No, it should have melted by now because you've done a phenomenal job for over 4 hours. But seriously, it doesn't cost a lot to make a difference. I got sent some Diet Coke socks for my birthday today. Someone has thought about what would make a perfect experience, what would make a perfect moment. Now, I'm going to embarrass Geoff. Literally, 12:30.
No. You're going to have the final word on this. Can we go back? We'll close, Dean. We'll close today with, we're talking about the perfect team, the perfect partnership, both together, okay? Both together. This is what this is what happened, okay? God's honest truth, this is what happened. At about 11:30 p.m, a couple of months ago when everything was going crazy, I received an email. So I did a live session, and an accountant had seen this, a tax accountant had seen my live session. 11:30 at night, he sends me an email. Geoff, loved your stuff, loved your ideas. Could I be a bit cheeky? You know, and I know, and Nigel knows, the word cheeky means free. And I was like, no, I'm about to go to sleep. Can I be a bit cheeky? I represent a local, it's not a charity, it's a charity, yes, for seriously poorly children. It's a place called Grace House. And the London Marathon's been cancelled, and the Great North Run's been cancelled, and there's literally no funding coming in, but the children are still poorly. Would you mind, be a bit cheeky, would you mind if you could do one of your live sessions for Grace House? I'll get all my accountancy people to pay £10, £3, 3 pence, just to donate money towards the charity. And I replied back and I said, would love to. I don't know the charity, but I know of them. I don't know them personally. And I said, I would love to. I said, better still, how about we do the perfect day? And I'll bring my perfect partner, Nigel Risner, to do a double act. And we'll give double the amount of stuff. And now, at this point, I didn't say to Nigel, oh, by the way, it's a freebie. And I just said, oh, you're doing this on this date. He said, all right, fine.
Nadine, when he said it was called Grace House, I thought it was for his daughter Grace. I thought I was funding a flat for them in the Northeast. It doesn't cost much in the Northeast, but I thought it was funding a flat.
He said, is this for your
Rain's
daughter?
coming in now.
No, it's a charity. It's not. But yeah. So anyhow, long story short, we do the event. It went berserk on LinkedIn. People got behind it. Loads of people got. We raised £2,000 on the day, but it's going up every week because people are paying every month. Like a rolling thing. That's the one. So, and it was wonderful. And I tell you what, and this is, if it's not a tip, it's just a thing. If anybody wants to feel the very best they can be in the lowest ebb of what we're going through right now, just reach out and offer a charity support, because it'll be the best thing you do. And Nigel and I have said to this day, I mean, this has been great today, but it's a business conference. It's wonderful. Speakers Corner and working with Unity, and it's been brilliant. And all the people around the world, nothing will surpass helping a charity like this. So they raised a few £1,000s on the day. What they did is they bought some VR goggles because the children can't come in. They can't. They've got a safe distance. VR goggles, and they wear them now, so they pretend as if they're still at Grace House.
Oh,
it's a wonderful moment.
yeah.
You can't. Literally a week later, our doorbell went. And Grace and Elliot answered the door, and they said, "Oh, here's some ice cream. You've ordered ice cream?" And they said, "No." They said, "Oh, this is Geoff Ramm." They said, "Yeah, it's my dad." Oh, ice cream. And Nigel and I talk about ice cream a lot.
We do.
There was 2 tubs of ice cream that he sent, 4 chocolate flakes and 4 cones. And the kid's face was just... And Nigel has never forgiven the fact that I got ice cream, because obviously you can't send ice cream to London, it will melt. It's the greatest thing we've done, and all we're going to say to everybody who's watched today, reach out, offer, give. It'll be the greatest thing you've ever done. Nigel, I'm going to leave that last bit to you.
Actually, before you do that, actually, someone did send in a question earlier, and it probably means more to you than it does to me. Do you like monkey's blood on ice cream? That was from the... Is that an in-joke? Because I thought, was that rude?
I think it is, but I'll answer that in a minute. Monkey blood. So my slot finished at 12:30 today with you, as you know, and we were dead on time, and we're going to finish literally in a minute. At 12:31, after my session finished, my doorbell rang, and there was a man standing there with 3 punnets of ice cream. Now, I said, "I haven't ordered any ice cream." And he went, "No, it's come from Geoff Ramm." So for my birthday, my perfect partner has delivered from Newcastle ice cream to make me feel special, bearing in mind the event that we did. I want to close by just saying, you've been a star. Speakers Corner have been a star. This has been a perfect day for Geoff and I and the rest of the consortium speakers. And the way you've handled all of us, and bearing in mind we're motivational speakers, so we always talk too long, you've handled it amazingly, and we are so proud you've been part of our day.
Would you say, Nigel, that Nadine's been a star woman, not a star man?
I think she's been a star man today.
I don't mind. Oh, yes. Oh, I love that man. Oh, and I actually got to work with one of the official photographers, Dennis O'Regan, 2 or 3 years ago, launching his book. He did the David Bowie Serious Moonlight tour. And when he rang me to help him with the media training, I thought it was a wind-up, and it was like, wow, I am getting closer to David Bowie. I know he's not on this planet, but one day we will meet again. So I'm expecting the doorbell to ring some ice cream, Geoff. Now, very quickly, guys, because it is well over 240 minutes. I'm going to get told off by Speaker's Corner. It says, what a partnership. Happy birthday, Nigel. Sorry, Geoff, it's not your birthday. Great to see the monkey in action. Love you guys. Great energy. Love it. Anton Thailan. Tanya from Brussels. Without COVID, we wouldn't have had participated at this great webinar with amazing speakers, and thank you to me as well. Thank you. Happy birthday to you, Nigel, and see you in October. Oh, I say, I don't know what that is, but I'm delighted. Okay, and there's also Anton has said again, always very, very active. Thank you, Anton. You need that perfect partnership. Found mine after 26 years professionally and also personally. It's made such an impact. Gisela,
Sri Lanka.
Yeah, just fabulous. So when is the next world tour? Well, who knows? We'll have to watch this space. Such guys, Christoph from Belgium. So there's been lots of love coming in from around the world. Now I'm going to have to change this hashtag to nearly 300 minutes. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to walk after this. Lucky it's a comfy chair. Nigel, happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Birthday, whatever it is. Lovely to see you all. So I'm going to say goodbye and just do a very quick outro. Good luck. Have a lovely, lovely day. So what a perfect way to end this event, I think, with a superb double act comprising of Geoff and Nigel. Thanks to both of them again. It's been a busy day, hasn't it? And feel free to share your feedback with Speaker's Corner and tell them, you know, what you liked about the day, get some more information on all our keynote speakers. I hope that throughout the event you've seen and heard firsthand from our international keynote speakers the power of the spoken word. I certainly have, and how it can inspire us to reach our full potential, our true potential, even during those challenging of times. And with that in mind, you know, think about what will you do differently as a result of attending Showcase today. So maybe jot that down somewhere or tweet it using the hashtag 240 minutes. It'd be great to hear your thoughts, because I've had some great ideas and I'm sure you have as well. And forget to include the Speakers Corner handle at speakers_corner, if I can speak now, as well as my handle as well. You're welcome to use at Nadine Dereza. So thank you so much for joining us today for Around the World in 240 minutes in association with Speakers Corner. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the expert keynote speakers from across the world during this global event. I wish you all the best of luck and success, and I hope you and your families stay safe, well and healthy. Until next time, thanks so much for your company and goodbye.